All right, hi guys. I'm gonna walk you through day one of our Warhol project. So in case you were absent or you need some help getting started, I'm gonna show you just what we walked through on day one, which was Tuesday of this week. So I'm not doing anything different than what the directions say to do, but just in case you need that visual to kind of help you do things, you can review this video at any time and it will help you out. So we're looking at our green packet of directions here. Step one was to photograph. You guys did that on Monday. Step two was to upload. We did that at the beginning of class. And now step three, we're going to be removing our background. So I just grabbed this photo off Google here that'll be working nicely for our Warhol project. So it says step three, open your image in Photoshop. Did that. And we're going to be using the lasso tool. That's the third tool down right here. It looks like a little lasso. Just so you guys know, my Photoshop version is a little different. I'm using the 2015 version and you guys have 2018, but everything works pretty much the same. It might just look a little bit different. So I'm going to be using the lasso tool. If you have used Photoshop before and you're familiar with some other selection tools that you'd prefer to use, that's fine. But for the purposes of this project, I prefer the lasso tool. So we're going to use the lasso tool, and the directions say to choose a starting point with the mouse and click to start the selection. Keep the mouse button held and draw around your subject. So you're just tracing your subject out to cut them out and remove the background. Now it does not need to be perfect, but you do want to get as close to the edges of the person as possible. And it might take a couple of tries, that's okay, but you want to get as close to the edge as possible when you're cutting out. Now here's what happens. If you accidentally unclick the mouse, then this is what's going to happen. It's going to make that selection, and this is not the selection I want. So I'm going to hit Control D and I'm going to undo that selection there. Here's the big thing you want to avoid. I don't want to see this, like a big blob around the person. No, there I outlined myself. No, that's not good. You want to get as close as possible, but if it's not exact, it's okay. But you want to get as close to the edges as you can. So I'm just going to trace around my model here, and see, I'm not exactly on the edge, but it's close enough where I'm going to get all of the details and her shape there. And when I get to the edges, I can just kind of go along the edges and it'll make those straight lines for me. Oops, see, I kind of messed up there. And now I have my selection. So you should see what's called these marching ants here. Once you're all done, that's exactly what they look like. They look like little marching ants. So that means you have a selection. So after you might need to do that a couple times. If you mess up, you can hit Control-Alt-Z and it'll undo the last thing you did. Or if you see marching ants, it just means you have a selection. So if you hit Control-D, it will deselect. So now we're going to create a copy. We're still on step 3 here, but we're on page 2. So we are going to create a copy. So we're just going to right click anywhere, like on your person's face, right click and select layer via copy. Now what you should see over in your layers palette is 2 layers. You have your background layer, and then you have layer 1, which is your cutout. So now I'm just going to turn the background layer off. And what I see now is this transparent background. That means I've removed it. Now here's an important second step. If you have somebody posed like my model here, where she has this kind of space between her hand and her face, or if you had someone with their hands on their hips, if you have an additional section you need to cut out right here, because again, we don't want any blobs. So we're going to basically do the same thing. So I'm going to use my lasso tool. I'm going to cut her out right here, this space that goes kind of around her hair. And instead of layer via copy, I'm going to do layer via cut. So right click, layer via cut, and now I have this other layer over here of that selection. So I'm just going to delete that selection. And now I have a nice hole there. So that is what you want to do. Again, if you have hands on hips or a pose like this where you have a space that needs to be cut out, please cut that out. So that's all we're doing for step 3. We're just cutting out our person, getting rid of our background. So at this point, you want to save. Go to File, Save As, and we will name it something that makes sense. I'm using a Mac computer for this demonstration, but so yours looks a little different. But just remember to save as a PSD Photoshop file because we're not done. We need to edit it tomorrow. So save it as a PSD and start the file name with your last name. So mine would say Presser, Warhol, and then whatever class period that you're in. Remember to never, never, never save to your downloads and never use punctuation in your file name. So don't put a dot after a period, don't put commas or exclamation points, only use a space, an underscore, or a dash. All right, so now that we're all saved, we're going to turn ourselves into a stencil. So now this is the big part where your picture might have to change if you didn't have the best lighting. So we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, Threshold. And that's going to turn ourselves into a stencil. So you're going to see this effect. Now this threshold box here, it defaults to 128, but you can drag this to the right to get some more highlights, and you can drag it to the left to get more dark areas. Mine actually looked pretty good at 128, so I'm just going to leave it around there. But play around with yours because everyone's lighting was different, so you might need a different level than your neighbor. Just check and make sure that you see some face details like their eyes. I kind of lose her nose a little bit, but you get a little bit of the shadows there, and I can see her face and her pattern and everything. So this is a pretty good threshold level there, but you just want to play around with it. You don't want it to be too bright like this. Now we've completely lost her nose, and you don't want it too dark because now we've lost a lot of the details in her outfit. So somewhere in between where you get kind of even amounts of details, and that's something on your rubric that you want to have a good threshold level so that you can see the details on your person really well. So that's all we did on Tuesday. We just cut ourselves out, we removed the background, and we turned ourselves into a stencil. So find a good level there, hit OK once you're all done, and then this is what we ended with on Tuesday. So everybody should be to this point, and we will pick up where we left off tomorrow.